Can you believe it? It has been 3 months since I left my old job and started my new life as a full-time landscape photographer. And so in this video, I'm going to look back at the last 3 months and reflect on what's gone well and what's gone not so well. And I'm also going to look ahead at my plans for the next 3 months. The biggest change that I've had has been the change to my lifestyle. So before I went full-time, I used to work in IT, and I used to be based in an office just outside Edinburgh in a town called Livingston in Scotland. And that meant that I was away from home for most of the time. So I would drive up to Scotland on a Monday and I would stay there until Thursday evening when I was come home. So I was away from home most of the time. Now obviously, since going full time, I'm now based here in the Lakes 100% of the time, and that means I get to spend a huge amount more time with my wife, which is absolutely fantastic, and was actually the main reason, the main motivation behind the decision to go full-time as a landscape photographer. Another driving force behind the decision to go full-time was because I wanted to dedicate more time to growing as a photographer. And so since the start of September, I've been out shooting 5 times, sometimes even 6 times a week. And that's been fantastic. Now, inevitably, that has dropped off. And that's because of my decision to bring forward starting my business. Now, originally, I'd made the decision that I wanted to start my business in March 2020. So I was going to take 6 months to adjust to my new lifestyle and to start building my portfolio. And what actually happened was I adjusted to my lifestyle so quickly that I then made the decision that I actually wanted to bring forward starting the business. And so I actually started my business in October 2019. On the subject of my photography, I am very happy with the standard of photographs that I'm producing at the moment. I think I have seen an improvement in the standard of my photography, and that's partly due to the fact that I now have a lot more opportunity to shoot, and so I have the pick of the conditions. And I'm also pleased with the rate at which my photography is improving, and I'm hoping that that's going to continue on into 2020. I don't really like the term journey, but I think it describes exactly what us photographers are on. And so I think it's really important for me to document my photography journey. And so what I've decided to do is I'm going to produce a book. Every 3 months I'm going to produce a book that is a retrospective of the previous 3 months. And I've started that already. So I produced my first book that documents my photography from September, October and November 2019. And I built that on a platform called Blurb. Now I've just ordered the proof of that book, and if that comes back and that's okay, then it's my intention to actually sell that via the Blurb platform. Now I'm the sort of person that needs some direction in whatever they need to do. I always need to know what I'm trying to achieve, what I'm working towards. As my old boss used to say to me, he said, you've got to know what success looks like. And with that in mind, I've started a new project, and that project is called The Hand of Man. And it aims to showcase the positive impact that man has had on the Lake District landscape. The reason I've done that is I want to give my photography some purpose, some point to my photography other than just going out and taking pictures. And I think that that's really, really important to me as a photographer. In order to put together my exhibition, I need some frames to show off my work. And I priced this up. I need about 20 frames, and they cost, when I buy it bulk, about £25 each. And that means I need about £500, which I don't have. It's as simple as that. And so what I had done is I set up a Ko-fi page, and I've asked for people to help by making small donations. Now the idea behind Ko-fi is that it's like buying a creator like me a cup of coffee. So it's really like a three quid here or there, you know, not for big sums of money. So I set that up with a £500 target. And I talked about that in last week's video, and I have been absolutely blown away by the response. So many people have been so generous. And I've actually raised already more than 50% of my target, which has just blown my mind completely. I am amazed at just how generous everybody has been and how prepared everybody has been to get behind me. So that has been incredibly humbling. Now, the Hand of Man project hasn't been going very well. mostly because I brought forward starting the business, and so I haven't had as much time to shoot. I've been very busy with one-to-ones and workshops. But this has given me new focus. It was so many people backing me. Hopefully that's going to give me the focus that I need to get out there and get the shots that I need in order to put together this exhibition. As I mentioned before, I made the decision to bring forward starting my business by 5 months. Now, trying to make a living out of being a landscape photographer is going to be extremely difficult. And so it makes sense that I start my business sooner rather than later. But I've actually really enjoyed the challenge of starting to build that business, of trying to figure out what I'm best at and where my income will come from. Now, before I started that, obviously, I didn't come into this blind. What I did was I put together a business plan. And that business plan kind of laid out how I was going to make money. What was my business? What services, what products was I going to offer? And also it laid out how much money I wanted to make and what my targets were. And so what I did was I set out a projection or a target for my income, and that was on an ever-increasing scale. And so for the first 6 months, my plan was to no money at all. And then for the next 6 months, which covers spring and summer 2020, I had a certain amount of money per month that I wanted to make. And then autumn and winter 2020, that was doubled. And then it was doubled again and doubled again, right up to the winter of 2021. So we are looking at 2 years' time. And at that point, I'm going to make the decision as to whether or not I'm going to continue trying to be a landscape photographer, or if I'm going to admit defeat, acknowledge the fact that I'm never going to be able to make enough money, and go and find something else to do. So I want to talk now about some of the things that I have been doing to generate some income. What is my business currently made up of? Now, in the past, I've talked about the importance of one-to-ones. So one-to-ones are where other photographers hire me either as a photography teacher, somebody who can help them to improve their photography, or as a location guide that can help them get to some of the best locations in the Lake District. And one-to-ones have been extremely successful for me so far. They account for 56% of my income that I've made so far. And incidentally, the amount of income that I have already made enough money to cover me for spring of 2021. So I am already 3 months ahead of my target. The other benefit of doing one-to-ones is that they are really good fun. I've met some really, really nice people, and I've really, really enjoyed myself. And there are times at which I've had to kind of pinch myself, and had to kind of remind myself, this is a job. I'm doing this for a living. And sometimes I just cannot believe my luck. I really enjoyed it. One of the other downsides, though, of course, is that part of what I need to do in order to deliver a successful one-to-one is be kind of like a nice person to spend time with, and be a good guy, and that breaks down barriers, and you start to get very friendly with people. And it has been difficult at times at the end of one-to-ones to kind of break that and say, right, hand over your cash. The one-to-ones are going to be part of the teaching side of my business, and they go alongside the workshops. Now, very early on, I made the conscious decision that I wanted to run workshops with other YouTube photographers. And so at the moment, I'm putting together a schedule for 2020. And that's going to be workshops based here in the Lake District and down in Cornwall. And I'm going to be running those workshops with my good friends, James Burns and Tom Peters. Now, again, workshops have been really successful. I haven't done many of them, but they still account for 16% of the income that I've already made. So they're well worth doing. Now, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to create workshops that are extremely good value for money. So they are very, very competitively priced. They have very small number of people on them that we limit them to at the moment to 4 places. And for your money, you get 2 tutors. You get myself and either James or Tom. And so they represent extremely good value for money. Now we're starting simple. We're just doing little half-day workshops. But as time goes by, we will also start to introduce more complex, more complicated workshops. So even working up to workshops that run over a weekend that will require hotel stays and that kind of thing. Okay, so it now comes time to look at something that hasn't been particularly successful and something that I feared would be quite hard anyway, and that's been the sale of prints. Now, I have so far, prints account for 2% of my income, which is nothing. Now, this is mostly, I hope, because I haven't really done anything with that side of the business. I'm ashamed to admit that I haven't put any new prints on my shop since this time last year. So none of my new stuff, none of the stuff that I've taken this year is even available to buy. So that's my fault. And so I need to sort that out. I need to sort that out straight away. And I also need to start promoting it a bit more. So we'll look at that a little bit more in future. But prints is definitely an area that I still want to grow. Now, one thing that is in my business plan is that I'm not going to invest any more in gear. So I have all of the gear that I need to get me through at least the next 12 months. And that was important that I made sure that I'd made the investment in all the right equipment before I made the leap from amateur to full-time professional. So I have a full frame camera body, I have 3 lenses, I have a 16-35, I have a 24-70, and I have a 70-200. I have a very, very good tripod, and I have a full set of filters. So I'm not going to buy any more gear for the next 12 months at least. The one caveat to that is if Canon bring out a replacement for the M50. So the M50, which is what I'm filming on now, is my primary video camera, and it's a fantastic little camera. But if Canon bring out a replacement for that, I probably will be very interested in it. But it does need a couple of things. It has to shoot at 4K. So at the moment, I do everything in 1080p. And at 4K, it has to have the 1.6 crop that this has when shooting in full HD, and it also needs that wonderful Canon autofocus, the dual pixel autofocus, that needs to work in 4K as well. So that's the one caveat that I have. If Canon bring out a replacement for the M50, I'm going to be very interested in that. Now, one of the other things that was covered by my business plan was how I'm going to promote myself as a photographer, and that was purely social media. Now, obviously, YouTube is my biggest social media platform. We'll come back to that in a minute. But the other platforms that I use are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And this is where we've got a little bit of a problem. I have grown on all 3 of those platforms. I have seen an increase in the number of followers that I've got across the board. But I have to be honest, I don't really know what I'm trying to achieve with those platforms. Again, I don't really have a conducive social media strategy that explains what I'm trying to achieve. And so that's something that I'm going to have to look at in the new year and try and put together a proper strategy. You know, who I'm trying to target, what am I trying to provide. The first area that I think I'm going to look at is Facebook. Now, in the past, when I've done videos about social media, I've talked about how I want to use Facebook to target non-photographers with a view to promoting my print sales. And so that's something that I really need to do. I really need to sit down and figure out how I'm going to do that, how I'm going to achieve that. I am a little bit worried about making a switch because that's going to be a fairly significant switch. Now, I have been kind of dampening down the photography element of my Facebook posts and kind of being a lot more about the Lake District, which is essentially the direction that I need to go in. But I need to really make that full switch, and I also need to start to invest time in putting together videos specifically for Facebook. So these will be small short form videos that are about the Lake District and about my photography as far as the prints are concerned, the work that I'm doing. It's not about technique, not about promoting that side of the business, the teaching side of the business. So that's something else that I need to look at and really decide how I'm going to achieve that. So as I said before, obviously the most important social media platform for me is obviously YouTube. YouTube has been hugely successful for me in the last 3 months. I've seen a significant growth, not so much in subscribers, that has gone up, but I've seen a real growth in the amount of views that my videos are getting. So before I went full time, I would expect to get somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 views per video in the first week. And that's actually doubled. Now my subscribers haven't doubled, my subscribers have gone up by about 30%, but the views on my videos have doubled. At the minute I expect to get somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 views per video. Now that has actually had a big impact on the amount of money that my channel is generating through ad revenue. So I make a small amount of money through the ads that are shown at the beginning and at the end of these videos. And what's happened is that's grown to a point where I get a payment from Google every month. Now in order to trigger a payment from Google, you have to have earned about $100. And so when I first monetized my channel, I would get a payment, once or twice a year. But I'm now at the point where I get a payment every month. And that means that I am going to change my strategy slightly for YouTube, because before I did admit that I didn't think YouTube was actually going to form part of my strategy for my business. I didn't think it would generate enough money. But that's actually perhaps not the case. And it looks as though I might be able to generate up to as much as 10% of my overall income in the long term through Google Ad Revenue. So that's worth pursuing, particularly at the moment when the business is still very young. I do have some plans for my channel. I am going to try and mix it up a little bit. I'm going to start trying to create different types of video. I've actually started work on a series of videos which I hope to release in the new year, and that's a bit of a top secret project. Don't want to say too much about that at the moment. But I've also got some ideas for creating styles of videos that I don't think anybody's doing in our particular genre, in the landscape photography genre. And so that's something that I'm hoping to start doing almost immediately. So that brings me very nearly on to my plans for the winter, what I'm going to try and do in the next 3 months. So the first thing I'm going to try and do is generate the same amount of money over the winter that I did throughout the autumn. And if I achieve that, what that will mean is that I'm 6 months ahead of my target. So for the next 3 months, what I've tried to do is to divide my target up into the different income streams where I want to focus. And so as you can see, I'm looking to generate 50% of my income in the next 3 months by doing one-to-ones and workshops. And then there's a further 20% that's going to come from YouTube. Now, as you can also see there, 20% of my income should come from print sales. So that means I am going to have to invest a huge amount of energy into that. And I also include the sale of books in that as well. So I'm going to have to work really, really hard if I'm going to achieve that target. Now the final revenue stream that I want to establish is talks. So this is going to camera clubs and doing presentations, that sort of thing. Now most camera clubs are booked up well in advance. So what we're looking at here is trying to bring in business for this time next year, but you've got to start somewhere. And if I have a small financial target that I'm trying to achieve, that will give me the necessary incentive to get out there and start promoting myself as a speaker and approaching camera clubs. So that's just about it for this video. I hope you found it interesting and it's given you an insight into what my life is like trying to build a business and trying to become a full-time professional landscape photographer. I've really enjoyed the last 3 months. It's been fantastic. It's been such a brilliant time. But I do get the sense that the hard work has only just begun.